If you're comfortable with the basics of sniper and are just looking to optimize and step up, then this video series is for you. Alright? Hello, I'm MythicalEon, a superstring peak sniper 1 trick who has been playing since season 6 on the Chinese server. So I will be sharing some of my accumulated knowledge and findings on sniper, starting from general tips that can apply across any map to more map specific knowledge and tricks which will be covered in future videos. So I will be assuming that you at least are aware of the basics of sniper, so this won't be a starting from zero kind of guide. I would recommend looking for other tutorials or to seek coaching from better snipers if that's what you're looking for. But alright, let's get started with the general tips. Quick peeking from behind cover is still something common and basic, but I feel it's too important that you learn how to do this if you haven't learned it already. Right? So this is what the basic form looks like. Right? And I'll show it step by step. So first, you get to a right hand angle and you have a target that you want to hit or a space that you want to occupy. So for example, this person's head. Right? I will aim slightly to the left. I will scope in. I will step out, click, and then go straight back into cover. Right? So scope, step out, click, back cover. And if you do this really fast, it will look like this. Okay? So this is most useful for engaging long-range threats like snipers and DMRs that are trying to hold your position. But it's also just generally useful for angle isolation and to avoid damage, even against the closer range guns. You don't just want to get damage traded, right? So you get to deal burst damage to the enemies while beating their reaction time. And you can build uncertainty if you mix up your timings, be unpredictable, and even incorporate other peaks when they are expecting you. Right? Depending on who you watch, they might prefer to move first and then scope in order to peek and unpeek faster because they will have a higher starting movement speed. However, this means more control over your movement and it will be easier to overpeak, right? It will be easier to overpeak and expose too much of your character while negating a time savings anyways if you miss time. Right. It is a matter of preference, but personally, I value consistency and safety more. So scoping in first reduces your movement speed and makes the timing for shallow peaks a lot more forgiving. Right? It's much easier to have shallow peaks. So having narrow peaks not only makes it harder for your enemies to, react and flick onto you because you are exposing less of yourself. It also makes it harder to, it also encourages them to aim closer to your corner in order to counter you, right? If they're trying to challenge you. And when they're doing this, it's harder for them to adjust to any other peaks that you might try to use, right? Any other peaks that you might try to use in a moment. Because if they are aiming close to the corner, you're immediately moving away from their crosshair the moment you do anything else, right? And there's more room for error for them for their aim towards the left, which is completely open, instead of towards the right where you're running into their crosshair, right? That's more limited, so it will make it harder to hit you. And keep in mind that you can still use this peak even against moving targets, because all you're doing is you're trying to pre-aim a space that you're interested in. Right? It's up to you how you want to engage these fights, but this will still be a valuable option for you if you're just looking to avoid damage trades or to isolate angles, especially against snipers that you are not sure where they are. So far, I've been showing the basic form, but there are some useful variations that you should learn as well. And an important one is the use of shoulder fire while you pre-aim, right? So shoulder fire while you pre-aim. So this has a few advantages. One, because you're moving slower in shoulder fire, you're able to control your position behind the wall better and make fine adjustments. Right? And second, because your movement speed is slower to begin with, your movement speed is reduced far enough that it's easy to control how you peek as well. So it makes it very easy to peek very shallow. And you also guarantee that your gun is pointed forward instead of, being held like this, which exposes. So you're guaranteeing that your gun is always pointing forward, which makes it harder which makes it harder for the enemy to gain information on your position or your movement ahead of time, because otherwise they can see your gun moving before. Right? The other advantage is that it pulls your third-person camera closer to your body, right? It pulls your third-person camera closer to your character, so you're able to see more to the left around the corner. You can see, like these two guys. I'm exposing the leftmost guy right now, and you can see more to the side. However, there are some weaknesses. It takes longer to set up compared to the basic form, because you have to shoulder fire first and make fine adjustments. And you'll also be encouraged to hold closer to the corner because of your slower movement speed, right? And this might cause you to accidentally expose yourself more to the people to the right, which is also a disadvantage. When you shoulder fire, you have less vision towards the right. And you might also be exposing yourself because of how close you are holding to a corner, which allows them to, get free hits on you. But still, it is still very much worth learning to do as long as you're aware of the disadvantages and can play around them. Another useful variation is the use of papering while you're facing someone in pre-aim. So this abuses the fact that while you're in paper, you're able to move closer to the wall than you normally would in 3D. And when you unpaper, suddenly you're peeking. You see how I'm exposing my head when I wasn't before. So this allows you to aim directly at a person, unpaper, and just hit them immediately. Okay, but instead of unpapering, you should be using right click to unpaper. So yeah, as fast as you can, right? So you'll look like this, right? This works best when you have a slanted angle towards the enemy, right? And it's also possible that instead of doing your pre-aiming in 3D, you're able to do it in a paper as well, which makes it easier to hit narrow shots like those. However, there are a few disadvantages. One, the gun will always be showing because of how you're holding the gun. You could always try to do this, but now you can't aim at anything. And the other disadvantage is that your hand or your feet might be peeking a bit too much and they might be able to hit you if you're not careful enough. Right, but this is still a worthwhile variation to be aware of, but it will be preference if you use this or not. In some positions where you have a very slanted angle, this might be your only option, and it's better than nothing. So, be aware of it and be aware of the weaknesses and strengths of every single peak. Equally basic but important is how to keep information after a jump peak. So I've come to Space Lab to demonstrate because it's one of the harder maps to perform this in. But say that there are enemies coming here and you take a shot towards them. If you were to jump peek normally without any control, notice that I'm now in the wall and I couldn't see anything until I step up again. And this can cause you to miss crucial information that might show up on your minimap and might cause your people in mid to misjudge the situation. For example, they might have crossed up here, but since you're behind the wall, you cannot see it. And your mid players might misjudge the situation. So you need to be aware of the ability to keep information while you retreat back, right? So a few ways to do this is, one, you can flick your crosshair to the left so you can see more, right? You can still maintain vision. And the other thing is to use your paper to try to cushion your momentum faster, right? To cushion your momentum faster, so to keep you around this corner, right? What it means to keep information will depend on the angle and the map, and it will depend on the angle and the context. But the awareness that you should keep this is an optimization that's worth learning, right? After you fire a shot, you'll see the Kanami's gun will actually kick up in recoil before the rechambering begins, right? So kick up, rechamber, kick up, rechamber, right? Kick up, rechamber. So you can actually avoid this kick up recoil animation by tapping glide. And because this glide animation is shorter than the recoil animation, it will actually cause you to rechamber faster. So for example, see, you're rechambering immediately once you unglide compared to this. So let me just fire blankly so that you can see the difference. I'm going to be spam clicking this. Without the cancel, just listen to the rate of fire. Alright? And now with the cancel. Oh, I missed. That's something that you need to be wary of, by the way. Right? So you're able to shoot faster just by tapping paper. But just because that this option exists doesn't mean that you should be using it all the time. For example, because you are doing a unnecessary movement. For example, if there's a long range character that you are trying to hit, and he is unable to do meaningful damage to you, so jumping is not really worthwhile anymore. For example, your vet or shotgun. Then I think it's better that you just stand still and hit your shot, rather than just incorporate movement and maybe you miss your shot or maybe you miss the headshot. Right? So with the scope, it will look something like this. You just tap paper after a jump shot if you are going to jump shot anyways. Right? Just tap paper and you're able to rechamber faster. When you have a single bullet left in the chamber and none in the magazine left, only a single bullet left, when you fire your gun, you will be reloading immediately without rechambering because there's no bullet to rechamber, right? So fire, out the magazine, in a new one, rechamber, right? However, when you still have bullets in your magazine after a shot, you will automatically rechamber, right? But if you were to reload in this state, for some reason, you will be rechambering again even though there's already a bullet in the chamber. The game does not account for this. So this actually wastes time if you are trying to, let's say, take a shot and you intend to reload. Right? You wait for the rechamber, you reload, and then you rechamber again. It wastes time. So in order for your ammo management to be better and to be more battle ready at all times, right, you're actually able to skip this first rechamber animation. If you were to reload, press the reload button before you rechamber. So after I take this shot, I intend to reload. Press R. I don't rechamber. I reload and then I rechamber. And this helps you be faster, right? Okay. So this will be very common for Kanami, for example. Let's say if I'm trying to hit a site, I want to use my A1 scans, A1 scan, and I just immediately reload. And I'm ready to fight faster when I'm onto the side. There is just one small thing to note about this, however, is that after you shoot your gun, if you were to tap paper, if you want to, control the recoil, if you want to cancel the recoil, you'll immediately rechamber. I cannot press R, I cannot reload buffer anymore. So let me just try that. I'm pressing R. And I cannot cancel it anymore. While the benefits of using this is very clear, you're trying to shoot faster. When you're intending to reload, you're not trying to shoot faster anymore, so just be aware and don't tap paper. I still do this accidentally, so just get used to it. As a sniper, you'll be spending a lot of time in your ADS state, and you'll be moving a lot in your ADS state. However, your ADS state is very slow. Your movement speed is very, very slow. So how you can circumvent this is usually to jump first and then ADS, so that you keep the jump momentum. And you can also double jump to keep this momentum, right? As long as you're looking at the same direction. But after you land, you'll find that you lost all your momentum anyways. So how you can normally deal with this is that after every landing, you can un-ADS and then ADS again, right? And this helps you keep speed and move. Right, and this also lets you change direction. However, every time you un-ADS, you're losing all your charge state. And some timings will exist when the enemies pick you at the exact moment that you un-ADS, and that can be quite devastating. So if you want to keep your ADS, you can do jump chaining instead, where you time your jump properly right as you land to keep the momentum going. So for example, if I'm going to the other side, right? Oh, my bad. I missed the first jump. Oh, right. Oh, I was a bit late. Don't worry. Yeah. You're able to keep your momentum. If you're late, you'll lose a bit of speed, but if you do it properly, you can go quite far. However, the sideways jump is actually not very practical because usually when you're aiming to the side, there's an angle you're interested in, and as you jump, you're going to be changing your angle. So momentum chaining is not going to work as well anymore, right? Momentum chaining isn't going to work as well. What's more important is the ability to jump chain forwards and especially backwards, right? So we'll see what it looks like. Forward, right? Even if you're able to just hit one, it's already a lot of space that you otherwise wouldn't have. I slowed down because I'm late, right? I'm not an active player anymore. I need a lot more practice on this. See? And you're able to move a lot faster, cover a lot of distance. And especially backwards, because retreating is going to be something you do very often, and it's life or death, right? Right, backwards. I missed. All good. Missed again. All good. Okay, I am a fraud. Holy hell. Yeah. And I will slow down a little bit there because I was but I still keep some partial momentum. Right? See? Alright. So the forward chain variation is going to be very useful if you're trying to, for example, push a place while you're keeping your ADS. You're trying to keep speed while keeping your ADS in, and then you shoot whoever comes out. Right? This might be useful in, for example, Windy Town or any long map if you expect there's no sniper to shoot you. But the backwards one is extremely important. Right? Usually there will be situations where you're kiting people towards you and you're trying to shoot them before, and you're trying to shoot them as they come out. For those kind of situations, you either want to hit headshots or you want to hit full charge body shots that you can like confirm with a deagle shot later if they don't die. Right? So keeping ADS is very, very useful. Right? So the ability to chain jumps backwards is extremely important. Right? The ability to chain jumps backwards is extremely important. But there's also another issue. It's timing dependent, and in a real game it might be chaotic. Even if you're able to hit one, you're able to cover a lot of distance, so that's already all good. But what will happen? What do you do if you miss the chain jump? Let's for example this. Right, you're already slowing down. What you can do, for example, is to just un-ADS and try to start the jump chain again. Right? You can try to start the jump chain again. And this will just help you, be more prepared in more situations and hit more shots. But if you're more advanced, you can also do things like having a running start running backwards. For example, you flick back. Oh, I'm not very good at this. This is why I'm not an advanced player, right? And you're able to move even faster this way. And you can just reset again. Right? But you need a bit more control over your mouse, which I do not have, as you can see. Right? You're able to move even faster. And you can start again this way, if you need to. But, you're flicking away, so you're going to have less time seeing in front of you. There are also some people who are able to jump chain this way. And like, for example, there's an angle that I'm looking at, right? They're able to do this, and then they flick back to jump chain again. And then continue looking here. I'm not very good at this though. I am quite bad at this, even in my peak. So, experiment more is what I would say. But the ability to jump chain is something that I think should be practiced. If not just for the basic, backwards variation. And lastly, for this video, we'll be talking about the two pieces of utility that usually sabotages a sniper. The smoke bomb and the shield barrier. These two are usually detrimental to the sniper, but there are ways to use them to your advantage. So a basic concept for third-person games in this game is that your camera is detached from your character, so you can actually be inside the smoke, but your camera is still outside, so you can't see anything inside the smoke. Right? So you're effectively blind. You're effectively blind until you're some way in the smoke. This also means that the enemies are blind when they come into the smoke. A way to abuse this for sniper is to use a first-person camera, and you can achieve that with ADS. And now you're in first person, you can see inside the smoke, or even shoulder fire to bring it closer to you. For other characters, this becomes very awkward to aim with ADS because you need multiple shots, right? You need multiple shots. But for sniper, even just one flick shot will do the trick. So on Coconut and especially Kanami, who's always gonna have a smoke, you could, for example, get in the smoke and just like wait for them to come in, right? Just wait, and then get out. And once they are out, you go back in again because they're effectively blind. They cannot do anything back against you, right? Another thing that could be noticed with a smoke grenade is that there is the game does not block your vision if your camera is in between the smoke. Right, you can still see outside the smoke. You can still gain information even without a scan, and this shows up in the minimap. And you can even take shots. You can even take shots against them. Right? This is also gonna be extremely useful if you have a Digger, even on other characters. Right? Just because of third-person camera. But it's gonna be a bit of angle dependence. Right? There will be a bit of angle dependence. But you can still take shots. So that's for the smoke grenade. Next is the shield barrier. Alright, the bullet comes out from around the scope of the gun, right? It comes out around the scope of the gun. So you can actually have your character for snipers. You can have your character inside the shield, but the gun outside, and you are able to shoot. Right? You're able to shoot outside while you're still protected. In general, you should be learning how to, you know, peek with this as an arbitrary cover. You use this as an arbitrary cover, right? But there are still some other tricks. There are some high elevated positions where this actually allows you to naturally use this arc, you know, to just hit. Right? I was moving a bit there out of bad habits, but you know, you understand what I mean. Right? Normally, it will just get blocked otherwise. So these are some tricks you can use for the shield barrier as well. Right, that will be it for the general tips for the snipers that's not character dependent. In the next video, we'll be going through character dependent utility usage and, you know, concepts that might be useful. So Kanami specifically or Coconut specifically that can be used throughout maps. And after that, we'll be going into individual maps to learn about individual map tech and the techniques and positions. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this will help you, and I'll see you next time. Kanami is adorable.